we will be taking this briefing on in English today. If you have any questions throughout the briefing, please put that in the chat box and we will answer as we come along. So again, welcome to our first National Grant RFP information session. Page 2, slide 2, Young. So today on agenda, as I had mentioned, we are going to go through our grant eligibility and priorities, talk about the grant process, as well as the timeline and the Q&A. So just very briefly about KACF. We are a foundation that was started 21 years ago, wanting to give back to the community. It really invests in the nonprofit community here in New York, New Jersey area, as well as mobilize Korean Americans to be philanthropic. So for the past 21 years, we really have 3 strategies of change. 1, invest in community. So that is our grant making. And we have awarded nearly $12 million to about 400 projects in the past 21 years here in the New York, New Jersey area. In addition to our grant making, we also provide organizational management consulting, that is leadership development as well as organizational development. We have an in-house consulting program where nonprofit organizations can work with our capacity builder to help them to be more impactful, more effective, efficient, to better serve the community that they work with. We also are really focused on igniting a philanthropic movement. And that is not a euphemism for fundraising. We really believe that it is important to rally and mobilize Korean Americans to give, but also to become advocates for the Korean American community. It's a really way to get to know the community as well as how to champion. And for that, we have an annual giving summit where philanthropists or folks interested in how to give can come together for a one-day conference, as well as a participatory grant making where we really engage volunteers to do the grant making here in New York, New Jersey area. Participatory grant making will not be part of the national grants, except for in DC, and I'll go a little bit more into that a little bit later. And the third strategy for change that the KACF really engages in is around data. I know that many of us work within the Korean American community and the Asian American community, but there's never enough data to make the case as to the needs in our community and to really elevate the Korean American and Asian American community. So we fund research, and the research really kind of help us to advance our grant making, but also we make it available for nonprofit organizations as well as other stakeholders who have interest in the Korean American community. Next slide. So in terms of KACF grant making, our North Star is to increase the economic security of low-income Korean Americans. And that really means having the resources for individuals and families to achieve their full economic potential. And that could be through education, job training, job skills building, job placement, financial literacy, making public benefits accessible to folks, affordable housing, legal services, mental and physical health, as well as other pathways for immediate short-term and the long-term economic stability. So our grant-making North Star, the umbrella, is really around the increasing of economic security of low-income Korean Americans. Next slide. As I had mentioned, we have been doing this work here in New York, New Jersey for the past 21 years, and we are expanding this work nationally. We had done a very small we had made available a small pot of money for national grants last year, but this is the first time that we are really giving this out to fuller and wider community. And the reason that we are doing a national funding is, one, over the years, we have heard from Korean Americans in other parts of the country about need for funding in their community. There are nonprofit organizations that are doing good work, but there is lack of funding. And also during the time of COVID, I think it has really sort of brought to bear that the Korean and Asian American community were taking the big hit just in terms of how our communities and community members were being affected by the pandemic. But again, there weren't enough resources that are going out to the community to ensure that folks are able to weather the crisis, but more importantly, to really sort of set them up for success in the long term. So this year, we'll be allocating $500,000 to projects that are outside of New York and New Jersey, which means organizations based in New York and New Jersey are not eligible for this funding. New York and New Jersey organizations are already in grant process right now through our local community grants, but they are not eligible to apply for this funding as a lead organization. Our funding is up for, so it is $500,000 for a general pot in whole, in totality, but each organization can apply for funding up to $50,000. So that is about 10 organizations. Could be a little more, it could be a little less. It's all depending on the funding allocation. Next slide. So in terms of national grants, again, you can apply up to $50,000. The eligibility is you have to be a 501c3, or you can be a fiscal sponsor. If you have a fiscal sponsor organization, we need an agreement, a fiscal sponsor agreement from the organization and your organization in order to apply. It has to be a US-based organization. Again, New York and New Jersey organizations are not eligible to apply. Organizations has to be at least in operation for at least 6 months, meaning there has to be some level of track record in the work that you have been doing in your own community. Which of course this is sort of given, but must have an established and working board of directors, as well as have access to 990 and audited financials for the most recent year. So that is the very simple eligibility. In terms of the target population, we are prioritizing low-income Korean American individuals and families, and any other vulnerable population. And for organizations that are working with or that are non-Korean, as long as Korean Americans are part of your client population, you're eligible to apply. So organizations that are Korean-led, Korean-focused, you are eligible if you meet the very basic eligibility. If you are a non-Asian or non-Korean organization, Korean Americans have to be part of the target population for which you are requesting funding. And then lastly, in priorities, again, the umbrella is around the economic security, increasing the economic security of low-income Korean Americans. But we are prioritizing one, data, closing the data gaps in the needs of the Korean American community. We are interested in either seeding or supporting ongoing collaboratives or coalition building projects. We are interested in nationally focused projects to address barriers to economic security. And we are also will support regional projects. So if an organization is DC based or in Chicago or in LA, but they are aligned with our grant making goal of increasing the economic security of low income Korean Americans, they are eligible to apply. Next slide. So again, when it comes to data, we're thinking about community needs assessment. So if any one of you are interested in doing community needs assessment or a population or issue focused research that is eligible. So for a good example is here in New York, there is a research project looking at the status of Korean American seniors in 6 cities. A project like that is eligible for a grant through our national grant program. Collaborations, again, as I mentioned, if you want to support and launch some existing coalition work, that's eligible. So a good example could be if domestic organizations that are working on domestic violence across the country want to come together and work together in a collaborative project or build a coalition, that is something that is definitely eligible in terms of funding. And then the last piece, again, any sort of national or regional focus projects, you all are eligible to apply. In terms of timeline, the applications are currently up on our website. There is a Korean version as well as the English version. They're both available. The deadline to apply is October 13th. We are fairly moving fast as foundations can in terms of the grants. So everything is going to be done within the next 2 months. So the notification for declination for those organizations that we are not able to support, we will let you know the week of October 16th. For those organizations that we are looking to engage in further conversation, that is, sorry, I just lost the timeline for a second. It will be October 23rd through November 3rd. And again, most of this will be a Zoom conversations for about 90 minutes or so, except in the DC area. And there's actually a different process for organization in the DC. It's where there's an in-person site visit because we do have a DC philanthropic network. So as I had mentioned earlier, we have a participatory process, working with volunteers in reviewing proposals and going on a site visit. So only organization in the DC DMV area will go through a in-person site visit process, but all the organizations outside of DC DMV area, it will be a Zoom call with the program staff here in New York. The grant announcement will be made on December 11th, and we just lost the PowerPoint, but the grant announcement will be made by December 11th, and the grant term will be from December 15th of this year through December 15th of 2024. And the grant payment will be made upon signing of a grant agreement. Once the grants are made, we'll send you out a grant agreement, sign it, give it back to us, and we'll make the payments, one-time payment through an ACH process. All right, I know that was a lot of information. Young, if you could stop yep, thank you so much. If you could also stop the recording, Young, that would be great. Proposal. From your proposal and then from our conversation, we'll be looking at these 8 points. One, is it focused on economic security? So is the project that you are looking to get support from KACF, does it fit with our primary mission of increasing the economic security of low-income Korean Americans? And although we have, sort of listed the education, the housing, the legal services, this is where you are able to make the case as to why your project will increase the economic security of low-income Korean Americans. So that is the first thing that we look at. We look at whether it's targeting Korean Americans. If it's an organization, a non-Korean organization, let's say that is serving 1,000 people, but serving only 5 Korean Americans, but looking to receive funding to engage more Korean Americans, I think that would be a little bit challenging because we'll be wanting to know more of your track record in engaging the Korean American community, and how you are looking to what is your theory of change in terms of the work that you do and the serving of the Korean community? We don't have a specific number. It's not like the organization has to serve 30 Korean Americans. It's not that. But that example of 5 out of 1,000, that would be difficult. But let's say you are having, 10 people who are Korean Americans within a program that is serving 30 30 non-Koreans. That's something where we can sort of have a conversation. But it's really about making the case around the commitment to work with the Korean American community. And we also recognize that Korean American staff, bilingual, bicultural staff, is the biggest lever of change, especially in the non-Korean organization, if you're looking to serve this population. So we will be also looking at your staffing, or if you're looking to hire a Korean American staff to serve that community, that's one way to look at your commitment as well. We really focus on potential for impact. What are the activities that you are doing, and what are the outputs, and how are you sort of thinking about the impact? And it's not that it has to be perfect in any sense of the word, but there has to be a logical sort of ladder just in terms of what you are trying to achieve and what is the impact that you're trying to have. We also look at the capacity of the organization, and this is very much tied into the leadership. We look at staff leadership. We also look at board leadership, because we do believe that those two groups working in partnership does make the organization stronger. Moreover, does the organization have the capacity to execute? So for example, if an organization has 2 staff members, but they want to serve 10,000 people, there will be a lot of questions, right? But if there is an organization that may not necessarily have full capacity, but through this funding, or the leadership has the potential to grow in its leadership, in its capacity, then that's definitely an organization that we are interested in. We're looking for strong and clear programs. I'm going backwards. Strong and clear programs. That's another way to sort of think about this, is that, again, sometimes when programs are laid out on paper, it may sound as though it has a very robust programming, but we will be asking specific questions about what are the needs, how is the organization designing the program, and how it's being executed. We also are very focused on how to measure impact. I know, like in foundations, when we're talking about evaluation and measuring impact, it does sound very much like, oh my gosh, not everything that is important that is measured. And we totally agree. We're looking for quantitative as well as qualitative data. And it's really more about, does the organization have the intentionality to think about the impact that it's making? Is it listening to its constituents? And is it evaluating, at least on somewhat consistent basis, whether they are having the impact that they're wanting to have? And the last is around connection to other organizations. In any of the social problems that we're trying to solve, one organization cannot do it in one city. So we're really looking at organizations that are very much connected with its peer organizations, whether by the population that it serves or by the subject matter. So that kind of formal or informal partnership is something that we really value, and we look at in terms of the grant evaluation. So target population, focus on our North Star. It has strong program. It is able to articulate its impact, has a track record of creating programs and having an impact, strong leadership, both staff and board, and then also connections to other organizations. These are the 8 elements that we focus on when making a grant decision.